Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, hope you're having an amazing day. This year is going to be an absolute treat for PC gamers, and while there has been lots of focus on AMD's Zen 5 processors, I think Intel's Arrow Lake will also be very exciting as well, particularly for PC gamers. It's going to be very interesting to see how things shape up in terms of benchmarks, but to that end, there are a couple of very interesting leaks that have popped up for Arrow Lake that I want to talk to you guys about. But I want to begin with Nvidia. As you probably know, RTX 50 has had a lot of tentative release dates and a lot of information concerning the specifications. Well, there is a very interesting piece online that's been floating around concerning whether Nvidia would be showing up to Computex, and I want to talk to you guys about that, possibly some release stuff as well, right after this quick message from the sponsor of the video.
If you're running a copy of Windows 10 which isn't activated, of course, not only do you have to worry about the missing customization options, but there's also that annoying Windows desktop watermark reminding you to activate. Today's video is sponsored by WhoKeys.com, and they have an excellent price on Windows 10 Professional as well as Home keys. Yeah, and they also of course sell games. I've bought a few Windows 10 keys with my own personal account to test everything was legit and worked in preparation for this sponsored video. You can pick up one of their keys for 25% off using the coupon code RGT in the checkout. There's links to their website in the video description. Also, if you're building a few systems, there's bundles available too. Again, you can check out WhoKeys.com and use the coupon code RGT for 25% off the listed Windows 10 key prices.
It's hard to believe because honestly time has just gone so bloody quickly, at least in my personal opinion. It's almost 2 years ago that the RTX 4090 and other RTX 40 cards basically released. Now, I think most would agree that the flagship product, the 4090, possibly a few other SKUs in the RTX 40 lineup, has been pretty well received other than the, well, let's just be honest, the price is very painful, but aside from that, you know, the card was very performant. However, the mid-range products kind of, I think we can all agree, Nvidia just somewhat missed the mark. So it's going to be very interesting, I think, for a lot of folks regarding the RTX 50 cards, because ultimately, most people skip 1 to 2 generations. For example, if you had an RTX 20 card, maybe you didn't pick up the RTX 3080 or whatever, because, well, it's just very difficult mentally to say, well, I just spent like $1,000 on this, and now I have to do that again. And obviously, if there's a huge jump, like maybe if you had like a 980 and you went to a 1080, it can be a little more palatable, but a 2080 Ti to a 3080, Anyway, let me know if you feel differently in the comments down below. But either way, there have been a lot of reports concerning the release date for Nvidia's RTX 50 cards. Basically, there seems to be a lot of consensus online that Nvidia will be launching these GPUs between Q3 and Q4. Now, I've spoken to a couple of sources, and basically this does seem to still be the plan. Now, admittedly, there is some pushback. Some people are saying it's basically just going to be a paper launch, maybe the RTX 5090 only, and others saying, no, that's a load of bollocks. It's going to be like the 5080 and 5090, and basically things are just going to be very Nvidia-like. You guys kind of know how this works. Like, if you look at, I don't know, basically any Nvidia launch in the last, like, 200 million years, you'll kind of get an idea of what Nvidia does. They don't release all of the SKUs initially. They kind of just have like a playbook and it works for them. Now, obviously things may be different, and it's going to be very interesting based on the inventory and supply, because the middle range GPUs, prices are all over the place. However, I don't believe they're going to release like the RTX, I don't know, 5060 this year. It's just not going to happen. Let's just be honest. Either way, what videocards.com are reporting is that Computex is not the event the RTX 50 cards are going to be announced at. And honestly, I just think that's very logical, because if we look at this from a pure logic perspective, and also what Nvidia have done previously, why would they say, hey, let's announce this product, and let's say, hypothetically, this is not the release date, as in, like, I don't have a release date, I've only got a release window, but let's hypothetically play devil's advocate and say that October the 15th, Nvidia launched the 5090. Why would they at Computex months prior, when they could get card sales for the 4090 or the 4080 or whatever, announce a card. It just doesn't make sense. They're going to wait as long as possible, squeeze like a lemon as many customers into the 40 cards as possible, and then, you know, kind of do the normal thing. I'll be very interested to see how this works out. I still think the 50 cards are going to be very impressive. Again, the specs, and I've spoken about them many times, I'm not going to go over them too much in this video, but basically we're looking at 192 SM, and it seems that the clock frequencies are going whoop, but most of this is architectural improvements with, you know, new ray tracing cores, tensor cores, blah blah blah. It does seem to be a very impressive upgrade. As always though, we'll have to wait for maybe some benchmarks to leak, or ideally, you know, some maybe slides from Nvidia will start to drop online by accident, if you get my drift. Anyway, now let's move on to Intel. So, as I said at the beginning of the video, Zen 5 has been gaining a lot of attention recently, and honestly, I'm going to be very interested to see what actually of Zen 5 the rumors have been accurate or not. Like, I've heard so many different IPC numbers, from averages and integer and floating point. I've heard like 30% average performance gains, and I don't know. Some people are telling me that's that's way too high. It's like mid-teens, like 15-20% at best. Others are telling me no, it really is over 30%. Honestly, I'll just see and wait on that one. But what I will say about Arrow Lake is there does seem now to be some pretty solid information. Now, I'm probably going to butcher the person's name. I really apologize. If someone knows how to actually pronounce this correctly, please do DM me on Twitter or email me or something like that. I apologize, but I'm going to say Meb-Wo. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. If not, I really do apologize. Anyway, this is over on the message board Weibo, and basically what they are stating is that the flagship SKU is going to be the Core Ultra 9 285K. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Anyway, that's got 24 cores, and as we know, the performance cores, which are Lion Cove, do not have SMT. So basically this is 24/24. Now, what basically this user is saying, and they've got a reasonably good track record, they're basically saying that the clock frequency is going to regress versus what we have with Raptor Lake. Now, how much of a regression? Well, ultimately, this is not a released processor, but around 5.3 to 5.5 gigahertz does seem to be floating around. So roughly between, let's say, 12-ish% slower than the 14900KS. However, they are saying that the actual performance is still going to be outperforming the 14900KS. And this does seem to match up with what we've seen from Igor's lab. Now, of course, this does depend on the test. And I have heard that BIOSes have improved things a little tiny bit. I've heard around 10 to 20% improvement, depending on the task and whether it's multi-thread or single core. But yeah, around 10% does seem to be a pretty decent number in terms of performance, and that is basically the CPUs running at the same power envelope. So I'll be very interested, honestly, to see how Intel performs. As always with these things, it's very difficult just to use an average anyway, because an average can be like, and what I mean by that is, like, averages are great apart from if you are one of the users that need a CPU for a specific purpose and the CPU does very poorly or great in those benchmarks. Let's just say hypothetically, and this is just an example, this is not a leak, I really want to stress that, but let's say on average this does, like, let's say it outperforms, let's just hypothetically say it outperforms 15900K by like 15% on average, right? That's a nice easy number to work with. But in gaming, let's say it's 25% faster, well, the average of 10 or 15% just doesn't mean anything to you. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this ends up. I have heard that the performance cores are decent, but the E-cores are what are really that much more impressive for brain gone blank, Arrow Lake. So yeah. Now, of course, the other thing regarding what's happening with Raptor Lake at the moment, And I'm sure many of you are already kind of aware of this. You've had the whole baseline thing from Intel and motherboard vendors are, of course, releasing new BIOSes and whatever else. Personally, I have a 13900K and my processor has been fine. I am actually running an older BIOS at the moment. I may, if I get time, bugger around with this a little bit, but at the moment I've not had any crashing or instability issues. I will be curious to see how, how this ends up affecting Intel from a PR perspective in the future. However, of course, it may not just affect them at all. Like, the people who actually know about this stuff, in other words, like the really hardcore community, typically speaking, are quite small in terms of the percentage. Like the average person, it's no disrespect, like everyone has their thing, right? Everyone has their thing they geek over, but most PC gamers, and maybe I'm wrong about this, if you feel differently, let me know, but I think a lot of folks are just like, well, you know what, I need a new PC, I'm going to do a quick Google, okay, this is doing good in benchmarks, or maybe they don't even look at benchmarks, and they ask their friend for a recommendation, or they go to the store. Well, are stores such a thing anymore? I don't know about in the US, they're not such a big thing in the UK anymore, like a few stores here and there, but most people just order online. Anyway, my point is, it'll be very interesting to see how the next generation of processors ends up. I will be... The big problem Intel have, honestly, is the fact that it's once again a new motherboard platform. So the fact, obviously, you can't use like the currently existing one. It does mean that people are if you have like a 13900K, for example, if you want to go for like a 285. Well, you're going to need a new motherboard, so that does kind of mean that you may just end up buying AMD anyway. But then again, maybe if you have like a 5800X3D you're upgrading from, then, I guess it's kind of the same thing. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one, guys. As always, take care of yourself, have an amazing day. Bye for now.